Hi, this is Lisa Kendall, and I'm principal at Concord High School. And the focus of my Destination Innovation Project will be on the cultural, linguistic, and socioeconomic needs within our district and building capacity in which we're able to meet our students' needs across the district. So, to give you a frame of reference, the focus today will be on developing and strengthening our ability to meet the cultural, linguistic, and socioeconomic needs of our diverse student population. And I know one of the things that we've done as a district over the last decade is talk about how our population has changed and how we've become more diverse. And so the focus today will be on ways in which we can build systems within the district in order to enhance the learning needs of our diverse population. So just to give you a quick review, the data here on your screen represents not only our minority population, but also our economically disadvantaged, as well as those where English is not their first language. And so within this data, I think it's important to realize that we serve many different populations within our Concord community. And we need to make sure the learning strategies and the everyday, social, emotional, learning needs of our students reflect the realities within our various communities. So, where this idea came from can be broken down into three different segments. And the first segment being researching and getting a feel for what other districts and what other schools do across the nation where they have diverse populations that are at high performing and high poverty schools. So within this link right here, there's research. And what I've done is gone ahead and summarized that research to break down specific strategies in which we as a district want to employ across all 7 schools in order to meet our students' needs. And just in highlighting too, the first one being having high expectations for all student populations. And that is certainly key and something that we want to have here in Concord, but we also have to think of what strategies have we given the adults in our buildings to be able to make meaningful relationships and support students in meeting these high expectations. And as uncomfortable as this topic might be for some people in terms of getting into the nitty gritty and discussing the details that go into this, it is important to realize that specific students need specific strategies in order to be successful. And if we're being honest with ourselves, the majority of our adult population that serves our students comes from middle class white families. And that isn't necessarily what we're seeing in our classrooms. So, what strategies have we given adults in order to meet our diverse population? We also want to think about what accountability measures have been employed across the district to make sure that we have access to all of our learning for all students. I know as building principals, I can say with confidence that within each of our buildings, we've employed strategies and we've reviewed and reflect on those strategies, but now it's time to make it a more broad-based approach, something that we can integrate within the entire district to make sure we're serving all of our populations. Another place in where this idea came from came after the events of the summer of 2020, and it was quite profound here. You have access to this link where an individual student brought forth ways she felt that the Concord district could be more responsive to our diverse populations. And so while I'm proud of her of having that voice, she's a secondary student, she has the ability to voice those thoughts. She's also speaking for that second grader, that fourth grader, that, whether it be that student or that family that still has had those same experiences and sees ways in which we can grow as a district. The same can be said for staff leadership groups. This document in here that you have access to comes from teachers and staff members that want to see change within our district across all of the buildings. And I know I experienced that when I was at Southside, as well as here at the high school, as we have a district and we have teacher leaders and adult leaders that want to see change implemented. And so this is a way for our district to do so in a unified manner. And then lastly, you have access to a link of voices. We had about 10 students come together and answer questions that dealt with ways in which our district meets the learning needs of all populations. And it's interesting within here, you're going to hear students talk about experiences in the intermediate building, in the junior high building, and the high school. again, there's things that they see because they're on the inside. They're, the ones sitting in the seats, and they see things that we can do as a district to support our diverse populations. And then lastly, where this came from is just having an understanding of what other positions and what other teams exist within the communities that surround us. And again, responding to the needs within our diverse populations and having that unified front. So that is where this idea came from. And now we get to jump into strategic implementation. So taking this concept and breaking it down into manageable chunks. So that is what we're going to do now. So the first one will be focusing on creating structure and evaluating need within our district. So assembling those change agents, establishing norms, especially with this type of content, because it can be uncomfortable for people to weather as we discuss these types of situations and details, and then reviewing the data, and then jumping into a needs assessment. And all of these steps, again, come from research. But what I thought was really profound about the research when it comes to conducting the needs assessment is they say, while you can have numbers and you can have people complete surveys, it is really important to get that anecdotal data from our students, from our families, from our teachers, because they're on the inside and they see what's happening in the classrooms and in the community, and how we as a district are responding to specific needs within our community. So if we're going to, address our linguistic needs, our cultural needs, our socioeconomic needs, we need to know what our community is saying. So having data outside of numbers. And then from there, obviously, we want to take all of that information and narrow it down into short-term and long-term goals, which takes us to step 2. So once we've narrowed down what are our specific needs, then we want to make a 3 to 5 year plan. And the research was very adamant in saying that this isn't something that you're going to be able to address in 1 year. It's going to take time. So within that, then, this was also another important fact that the research showed is we want to make sure that we're exposing our staff to specific family and student needs and allowing our staff to understand that we're not talking in the abstract, that these are our actual students and our actual families where this needs assessment data has come from, and this is what our community is saying that they need. So again, going beyond the numbers and finding that human side to this aspect. And then from there, obviously, it's really important to train staff. And there's quite a few community agencies that have worked with individual buildings within our district, but it's time for us to build that comprehensive approach. And then lastly, within this, and again, the research speaks to, and you hear specific testimonials from adults where they didn't realize specific things that they're doing in the classroom when they're working with families or they're working with students, that is having an indirect conflict on the students' learning needs based on their cultural, linguistic, or socioeconomic needs. And those staff members needed to have time to self-reflect and realize, I'm doing this. It might be inadvertent, but this is what it's causing within my students. This is what's causing, an impact on their learning. So getting a feel for that self-reflection and providing time for that. And then we jump into step 3. And from there, we've collected the data, we've reviewed the data, we've made a plan, and now it's time to make sure that we're continually educating our staff. And again, research, when you go through the research, it certainly says that this is not a one and done. You train in August and then you're set for the rest of your lives. So as a district, we have got to weave in specific dates and timelines to make sure that we're continually revisiting the needs of our different diverse populations and making sure that we're building in respective practices. And then also building that partnership within the community. Once you have your adults trained and ready to implement different strategies in our buildings, we also have to make sure that we're partnering with student leaders, with families, so that we can bring them in to the school and make that connection. And one thing the research highlights is while we have different languages represented, we have different cultures represented, oftentimes people within diverse populations have had negative experiences in school. So if we bring in our parents, if we bring in our families and make that positive connection, then their children have a better chance of success in the classroom. So that takes us to step 4. And again, we're continuing that educational process, but we also want to start to really study our data. So we want to, we've built in these strategies, we've implemented them for, an extensive period of time, but now we need to look at our data and say, you know, is the achievement gap closing? Are we doing what all of this is all that we've been working towards? And again, looking beyond discipline data, looking at academic data and eliciting support from the community and saying, okay, we've been doing this. What are you seeing? How can we do this better for our Concord community? And then also, this was really unique within the research is when we have this district approach, once you get towards that area where you're comfortable, is starting to build in systems within the classroom, whether it be curriculum or some other method, but fostering a connection between the adults, the families, and the students in the school so that there can be more inclusive conversations and getting a better feel as we prepare our Concord students for life outside of our buildings. And then lastly, with any program, you want to continue to have accountability measures set in place to make sure your short-term and long-term goals are met and that you're reviewing your data. And then again, making it so that all students can achieve. So how will we know this is working? And essentially it comes down to all Concord schools being high-performing schools with diverse populations, closing that achievement gap, empowering all of our staff members with strategies to help all students be successful, and ultimately building that connection between home and school and being equal and supportive in all students' education. So what you have access here is you have 2 links that have embedded the research that I have compiled today, and then also building-based documents that we can start to modify as we move forward with this idea. So should you have any questions, here is my contact information, and I would be happy to talk anyone through the research that I worked through today, and I hope you've enjoyed the presentation.